The Tesla Model Y needs little introduction. It was the world's best-selling car last year, Australia's 6th best-selling car, and the top-selling electric car globally by a significant margin.
But rivals are springing up all across the globe looking to chip away at the Model Y's dominance. And the latest to come to Australia is this, the Ford Mustang Mach-E.
Now, we're not here to debate whether it's deserving of that Mustang badge because, let's be honest, you probably made your mind up before you clicked on this video. But today we're going to go through their interiors, see what they like to drive, see how they go on a charge, how long they take to charge, see how much they cost, to answer the question, is the Tesla the sales champ for a reason? Or does the Ford have the goods to unseat it? Let's find out. We're testing the cheapest models in each range, the Tesla Model Y rear-wheel drive and the Ford Mustang Mach-E Select rear-wheel drive. When we tested these cars, the Model Y was priced from $65,400 before on-road costs, while the Mach-E Select was priced from $72,990 before on-road costs. However, since we filmed this video, Tesla has cut the price 3 times to $55,900 before on-road costs, a $9,500 saving. And the red multi-coat paint on our test vehicle has been replaced by a new ultra red finish. Meanwhile, Ford has also cut the Mach-E Select's price to $64,990 before on-road costs, a saving of $8,000. Our Model Y test car is optioned with 20-inch induction wheels for $2,400, and this red paint was $2,400 at the time of testing, while the Mach-E wears rapid red prestige paint for $700 and no other options. It means the $75–90 difference in RRPs at the time of testing is now about $9,000, but closes to about $7,000 on the road, roughly $66,000 drive away for the Tesla and $73,000 drive away for the Ford in New South Wales. Features in the Tesla include LED headlights and tail lights, parking sensors, a power tailgate, 15-inch touchscreen with sat-nav, synthetic leather look upholstery, heated power adjustable front seats, a glass roof, dual wireless phone chargers, adaptive cruise control, lane centering assist, and blind spot cameras. The Ford has a similar equipment list to the Tesla, but it has 19-inch wheels instead of the Tesla's optional 20s, a 15.5-inch portrait screen instead of a landscape 15-inch display, blind spot monitoring lights rather than cameras, and it gains features such as rear cross traffic alert, the 10.2-inch instrument display, 360-degree camera, as well as Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, AM radio, and a tyre repair kit. The Mustang also gets a keypad on the driver's door pillar, allowing you to leave the key inside the car if you're going to the beach, and lock and unlock the doors using a PIN code.
So first up, this interior is not like a regular Mustang GT. It's pretty modern, nice and minimalist, big 15.5-inch screen, a small driver display. This amazing Bang & Olufsen soundbar, it not only acts as a really nice speaker setup, there's 10 speakers inside, but we reckon it looks pretty cool. I reckon the screen's a bit big. This portrait style, 15.5 inches, as I already mentioned, it kind of dominates your line of sight. But these small app icons, I reckon they could be a bit bigger. They're quite fiddly and hard to use on the move. You have to be really precise. At the bottom of the screen, you've got your climate controls, and while we usually get a bit annoyed at climate controls buried in the screen, they're on permanent display, which makes them really easy to use. Plus, this dial, once you hit one of the functions, whether it's temperature or fan speed, acts as a way of controlling your climate. It also doubles as the volume dial. It's good to see that Ford has kept a nice chunky dial for some basic functions. In stark contrast to the big infotainment screen, the digital driver display is actually quite small, but it's pretty functional. You get your battery information with range, how much charge you've got. There's a small section where it'll display nav or when your safety assist systems are activated. Plus, there's a digital speedo, and in true Mustang form, it's listed as ground speed. The front seats are very comfortable. They're probably a tiny bit on the soft side, but that makes for great long distance touring. They're 6-way adjustable, powered of course. Plus, down here is electric lumbar support, making for an easy and comfortable driving position. For a car with an iconic name like Mustang, which, let's face it, evokes images of sportiness, the seats could use a little more support. There's a distinct lack of side bolstering, while under-thigh support isn't the last word in Mach-E sportiness. Storage is okay, it's kind of average. There's a small bin here, but it's not exactly deep. There's a 12-volt plug in here. Nicely padded lid, which is good. A pair of cup holders. Down here, you've got a wireless phone charging pad, but unlike the Tesla, only one side is functional. The other side is just a regular place to sit your phone. There's one each of USB Type-C and Type-A. down here. One slightly quirky feature are these oddball door pulls. They're an interesting design. You just do that, and they're a case of redesigning something that probably didn't need redesigning. While there are some minor quibbles with the cabin, like the door handles and this massive screen, which I think could be a little bit smaller, overall, it's a nice cabin. It's well thought out, nicely designed, with some really nice touches, like this Bang & Olufsen soundbar, which I think looks fantastic. It all feels really well put together, nice and solid and comfortable. The second row is actually pretty comfortable. There's plenty of space, certainly behind my own driving position. I'm 173 centimeters tall, so not exactly a giant, but I've got plenty of knee room, plenty of toe room, plenty of leg room. Under thigh support is good, and arguably better than it is in the front seat. The seats themselves are comfortable, probably a little bit too soft, but that makes for a good time when you're long distance touring. As for the bench, 3 across might be a stretch. It's probably best saved for 2 people. The seat back of the middle seat is a little bit firm, and that's down to this fold down armrest. It feels like there's a piece of wood in there, which of course there isn't, but it isn't very comfortable. Anyone consigned to this position for any long distance won't be very happy. As for amenities, rear seat passengers get air vents. There's a USB Type A and another USB-C plug. There are map pockets. No noticeable door pockets of any kind. They're just for wallets and phones really. You're not fitting bottles in there. And then you've got this fold down armrest with a couple of cup holders, and that pretty much sums up the rear seat space in the Mustang Mach-E.
Now, if you thought the interior of the Mach-E was minimalist, this Tesla takes it to another level. Everything in here runs through this big 15-inch touchscreen in the middle of the dash, including the speed display, which is something we're not really fans of, and it's just more distracting than it needs to be. It is super fast though, and it's really like a big smartphone once you start to get to use it and really learn how the system works. And it puts other manufacturers to shame in how slow their infotainment systems can be once you try this one. That does include the climate controls. They are in this touchscreen, so it's just not as easy as using traditional dials or switches like you find in some other cars. Though the screen is quite close to the driver, so it does make it easier, and it's not the worst thing in the world. You will get used to it over time. Now, Tesla persists without Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, so things like Waze you can't use, though the integrated sat-nav is based on Google Maps, so it is pretty good. And you have apps like Spotify, Apple Music, or your usual music services for streaming built into the infotainment system. Another frustrating thing about this screen is you have the controls for the glove box and the mirrors. It's just harder than it needs to be, and I don't know what's wrong with a latch on the glove box or buttons on the doors. It's just frustrating, and one of those things that Tesla does their own way that you either like or will not like. These front seats, the synthetic leather on them is softer than that in the Ford, and overall we do like the material, though it does get quite sweaty on hot days. And the seats themselves have some unusual pain points that dig into you that aren't the best on a longer drive. They have heated front seats with 8-way power adjust plus lumbar. And they are overall pretty good though. Yeah, just some pain points and they're not the best on a longer journey. Now in terms of the actual seating position, you do sit quite high in this car compared to a Model 3, the sedan version of the Model Y. And the visibility is really good out the front because the bonnet sort of drops away in front of you. Pretty good out the side too. You've got pretty large side windows, but the back visibility is pretty poor. You can only really see the bonnet line and the windscreen of the car behind you, and it's just not as good as it really should be for a big SUV like this. In terms of storage, it is more useful in here than what you get in the Mach-E. But this section under the armrest that's a moderate size for storing valuables. Another area in here that's good for wallets, keys, those kinds of things. Dual wireless phone charge, which is something unusual in a car, even in this category. 2 cup holders. The door bins are big enough for a bottle, and they have this sort of suede felt-like lining. It means things don't rattle around. And the glove box, if we just open it like that, it's a decent size, though it isn't the largest in this class, and probably should be bigger for a car like this. Now, because this car has the black interior on the dash, you get this faux wood finish here. I'm not the biggest fan. I know some customers do like it, but fortunately, if you don't, Tesla is moving away from this in their latest models. Hopefully the update to the Model Y, which we think will come late 2024, early 2025, will no longer have this feature. Other amenities in here, you've got dual zone climate control, heated steering wheel, keyless entry and start, got 2 USB-C ports and a 12-volt socket in here as well. And obviously those dual wireless phone chargers I mentioned before. But overall, this space is roomier, more practical than what you get in the Ford. Though not everyone will like that more of the car's functions are in this touchscreen, and it does have a bit more of a learning curve than the Mach-E. Some other things to note, you've got this panoramic glass roof that does get quite hot in summer and means you might have to run the aircon up on a higher setting than you might expect. The releases for the doors are these buttons on the door handles. First timers might find themselves going for the manual releases that are below them, which are only meant for emergencies, but after a while you do get used to them and you do find yourself quickly adapting to them. Another thing to note is the sound system. Tesla doesn't use branded sound systems, but this system is really, really good for a car in this price bracket. Tesla essentially poached engineers from Bang & Olufsen and other big audio brands to make this work, and it's really, really loud. You can probably make yourself deaf if you put it on full volume for too long, and overall it's just a highlight of this car that a lot of people don't talk about with Tesla vehicles. Now, it might not look like from the outside, but space is actually better in the back of the Tesla than the Mach-E. There's markedly more knee room, a lot more toe room, and surprisingly more headroom despite this big glass roof. Now, the seat base isn't very long, so there's not a whole lot of under thigh support, but the cabin is definitely wider, so you can fit 3 adults in comfort back here, which you can't in the Ford. Other things to note, you've got 2 USB-C ports, 2 rear air vents, map pockets on each front seat, as well as a fold-down center armrest with 2 cup holders. You've got soft touch materials on the doors, 3 top tether points and 2 ISOFIX points. This middle seat also has a headrest that comes up. Now, for passengers sitting in the middle, it's a lot more comfortable than the Ford, partly because Tesla has sculpted out this area under the air vents. So you can actually slide your feet forward and get quite a lot of comfort in the middle. The seat back is also softer too, which really does help. Overall, as with the front, it is just a more comfortable and roomier space in the back here.
While the Mach-E and the Tesla Model Y might look very similar dimensionally on the outside, is it the same on the inside, Alex?
Not really. Tesla says there's twice as much boot space in the Model Y compared to the Mach-E, and you can just see that. The opening is deeper, is longer, it's just a bigger space. Let's have a closer look. So Rob, Tesla claims 854 litres of boot space. They don't say if that's to the window or to the top of the seat backs, but either way, it's a massive area. You can see it's deeper and taller than the Mach-E, and it doesn't stop there. There's more space under the floor. It's big enough for a carry-on suitcase. Space on the side, probably big enough for a shopping bag as well. Other things, you've got a 12-volt socket, some illumination up here. The rear seats fold down 40-20-40 with these controls on the side. Other things, this tailgate is power operated, but there is no tyre repair kit or spare wheel. You have to pay extra to get a tyre repair kit from Tesla. As with most electric cars, there's just not space for a spare wheel. And if that's not enough, there's 117 litres under that front storage area for even more stuff. So how does that compare to the Mach-E?
Well, let's go over to the Mach-E and find out. Well, Alex, here we are at the Mustang, and it takes a very small win up front where there's 134 litres of storage under the bonnet. But as you can see, the rest of the boot, it's much smaller than the Tesla's. It's fractionally wider than the Tesla, but definitely not as long or as tall. Ford claims 402 litres to the seat backs or 519 litres to the roof. This floor can be lowered, but it does increase the load lip, which is pretty inconvenient for a lot of people. You've got some very small pockets here, nothing like the cavernous ones in the Tesla. You've got some tie-down points, LED light, 12 volt, and the seats fold 60-40, but unlike the Tesla, there's no levers here. You have to go in via the second row.
So a pretty convincing win for the Tesla then.
Absolutely.
The Mach-E Select is powered by a single electric motor developing 198 kilowatts and 430 newton meters, fed by a lithium iron phosphate battery with a usable capacity of 72 kilowatt hours. Ford claims 470 kilometers of driving range according to the WLTP test, and DC fast charging at up to 150 kilowatts. We beat Ford's 32-minute claim from a 10 to 80% recharge, recording 31 minutes and 20 seconds. It's worth calling out the lithium iron phosphate battery chemistry, or LFP for short, which, unlike the nickel manganese cobalt chemistry in some other electric cars, allows you to charge the battery to 100% on a regular basis without accelerating its wear or damaging it. On our highway range test loop, we recorded energy use of 18.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which equates to 387 kilometers of estimated highway driving range. Over a week of testing, we saw 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers energy consumption.
So Alex, we're in the Mustang Mach-E, and while it's not the V8 powered Mustang GT, it's not slow either. There's a nice amount of shove from standstill. I think we're calling it brisk or perky.
Yep.
And it's certainly enough to get you out of a hole in traffic or when you're merging onto a freeway.
Yeah, that's right. We've tested 0 to 100 in about 7.2 seconds, which is not slow by any means. One small gripe I will have around town is the feel of the brake pedal. It's a little bit odd at particularly low speeds, and the way the auto hold transitions into the one pedal mode when you're decelerating and accelerating from a stop. It's not the best. It could do with a little bit more tuning. We will say once you get it onto a nice road though, it is pretty good to drive. It's a little bit more roll than you might expect from a car with a Mustang badge, but by no means is it wallowy or floaty or anything like that. It's pretty tied down, those, yeah, a bit more roll, and those tyres aren't the last word in grip. They are meant for efficiency, but overall, it's pretty good. What do you think?
You're exactly right, Alex. It does handle pretty well. I do have some concerns around the steering. It's not terrible by any stretch, but it does require a little bit of finessing and some micro movements. Certainly in the Tesla, it was far more direct and precise, whereas here, it's just that tiny bit off. It's not bad by any stretch, but it is a point of difference.
There's a little bit more body roll too, I feel, in this car compared to the Tesla. It's neither of them is wallowy or not tied down by any means, just a little bit more roll and not quite as much control at high speeds.
I think the ride in the Mustang is a little on the firm side. It handles the bigger hits like speed bumps pretty well, but where I think it was left a little bit wanting was over the smaller, scrappier surfaces, minor undulations, where it just never felt really settled. It proved very fidgety, a little bit fussy, and just didn't feel quite as composed as the Model Y.
Yeah, completely agree. We took these cars on a really challenging piece of road in Sydney, and I sat in the back of the Mach-E, and it just kept skipping and constantly bouncing over bumps. It wasn't the end of the world. I guess you could probably get used to it, but it's just not as composed as the Tesla, and almost left my seat at one point. It really wasn't a very comfortable experience. The Tesla sort of smashes into big bumps. It deals with the big hits a bit firmer, but this car just never really feels settled at high speed on even really small imperfections in the road. It's not great, and definitely some room for improvement there. Some other things to note are the insulation on coarse strip surfaces in particular. There's quite a bit of tire roar and some wind noise too. It's not the worst in the world, but you do notice it, and you do need to turn up that 10-speaker sound system to really drown that out. And also point out the turning circle. It is tighter in this Mach-E compared to the Model Y. Neither is particularly great for a car of this size, but it is a little bit easy to do 3-point turns. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I largely agree. You can put it in untamed mode, and you get a
fake sort of
fake
V8 sound?
V8 sound to make you think like maybe, just maybe, if you squint, you're in a Mustang.
I'm not sure I like that. It's a little bit too fake for my liking.
I agree.
But some buyers may like it, but yeah, our jury's out on that one for sure. Should we head to the Tesla?
We shall.
The Model Y rear-wheel drive is also powered by a single electric motor. Tesla Australia doesn't quote power and torque figures. However, in China, the same vehicle quotes 194 kilowatts and 340 newton meters. Some estimates also list 220 kilowatts for this motor. Energy is stored in an LFP battery with a usable capacity of about 57.5 kilowatt hours for 455 kilometers of claimed WLTP driving range and fast charging at up to 170 kilowatts. Tesla does not quote a charging time. However, on test, we recorded a 10 to 80% fast charge in about 26 minutes and 50 seconds. On our highway range test loop, we recorded energy use of 15.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, or 364 kilometers of estimated driving range. Over a week of testing, we saw 15.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers on the trip computer. All right, now we're sitting in the Tesla, and the first thing you notice is probably the power delivery in this car. It's similar sort of speed to the Mach-E, but just more immediate. There's more throttle response, and it feels a bit zippier around town.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the raw numbers are 7.2, 0 to 100 for the Mach-E, and 6.9 for this, as tested by us previously. And you can, it might only be 0.3 seconds difference, but you can really feel it, particularly when you're moving away from standstill.
That's right, it's a bit zippier off the line, it's a bit more immediate, it pushes back into the seat. It's something we've come to expect from Tesla over the years. And some contributing to that is probably this steering wheel adds this feel of like you're in like a really big go-kart. It's really direct, it's really quite precise, only 2 turns lock to lock.
Yep.
So it means that only a little bit of steering will get you out of a jam, or it's easy to use in car parks as well, though it does take a little bit of getting used to, just because it is so quick, and you've got to sort of readjust your brain, but it does happen pretty quickly.
I'd agree with that, Alex. I found in the Mach-E, it needs just a little bit more work to get it to go where you want it. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Of course, it's a steering wheel. You point it the direction you want to go in, and it goes there. But it requires more micro adjustments. Whereas in the Tesla, it's just super precise and super responsive. You just turn once, and that's where you're going. Yeah,
you've got 3 modes for the steering in the Tesla: Comfort, Standard, Sport. They're all heavier than you might expect for a mid-size SUV, but none of them is too heavy for around town use, and they're all pretty agreeable. What is a bit firm and a bit heavy is the suspension. It's Worth noting, this car doesn't have the comfort suspension upgrade, which came to the Model Y early 2023, which just softened up the dampers a bit and just made it a little bit more comfortable around town. By no means is this harsh or too stiff to live with, but it's just, you can see there, it's a little bit firm over bumps, and it's really those big hits, potholes, speed bumps, where you do feel firm.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think where the Tesla shines though is on the smaller imperfections, the little undulations, the road rash that we see so often on our roads. I think this is much more composed than the Mach-E.
Yeah.
But the Mach-E, it may be softer over the bigger hits, but it also it tends to wallow a bit more. Its body control isn't nearly as composed as this.
And this corner's flatter too. It sits flatter in corners. It doesn't roll as much. Just feels like a stiffer, more enjoyable to drive car, really. Just sort of not what you'd expect, given it's going up against a car that has a Mustang badge on it, but that's the truth of it. That
is absolutely the truth of it. I do want to temper this by saying, the Mustang Mach-E isn't a bad car to drive. It's actually very good. It's just that this is just a little bit better in just about every key area.
In terms of brake pedal feel, it's pretty good in this Tesla. The transition between regenerative braking and the actual disc brakes, the friction brakes, is pretty well controlled. Tesla has a pretty good handle on this. They've been building electric cars for more than 15 years now. It doesn't have the same bite as the Mach-E, I find, but it's still pretty good. And the regen braking itself is well controlled. It's quite progressive, but it does have that initial bite that means it's quite good in the one pedal mode.
Yeah, agreed. Again, the Mach-E, that transition between regen, for starters, I think the Tesla's regen is way better. But yes, that transition between regen and actual braking, it's a bit more noticeable. There's like a step change almost.
Yeah.
And the brakes tend to grab just a little bit once you get through that regen phase.
Spot on. And in some drive modes, it can also be a little bit grabby at low speeds, the throttle in the Mach-E, compared to this, which is more progressive and, as you said before, a bit more immediate, but in a good way. Immediate in a good way.
Yeah, 100% agree, Alex.
A few other things before we head to the verdict. This car has auto lights and auto wipers, as you'd expect of a car at this price in 2024. But the programming is not the best. This is a constant bugbear we have with Tesla cars. The auto wipers can turn on when there's no rain and then not turn on when there is rain. And the auto lights tend to just flash high beam for no reason at certain times on well-marked streets. It's a constant issue. Tesla is aware of it, but they seem to be slow in rolling out a fix, though the fact they're aware of it is a good sign. And also the road noise. Neither of these cars is quiet, as we said when we were driving the Mach-E, but it's just that tyre noise is always there, as well as a bit of wind noise. Not the end of the world, and that stereo is pretty good, as we said, so you can just drown it out. But it's just worth keeping in mind that this is not as harsh as you might expect of a car that doesn't have an engine to play over the soundtrack.
So, shall we head to the verdict, Alex?
I think we should. Let's go.
Well, Alex, I think the result is clear. The Tesla Model Y wins this comparison. It's got a bigger boot, it's roomier inside, the technology is quicker and more responsive, it's more energy efficient, but crucially, Alex, it's better to drive.
That's right. The Mach-E does claw back some points for being a more conventional car. So it's got digital speed display, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, better seats, a longer warranty, things like that. And you have to remember that the latest prices, the Mustang is $7,000 more expensive than the Tesla Drive Away, and that buys a lot of electricity.
Even if they were the same price, the Tesla Model Y would still win this comparison.
That's right, Rob. If you enjoyed this video, please click like to stay up to date with all of our latest videos, hit subscribe, and of course, head over to Drive.com.au to read the full written comparison.